She stirred her coffee with the wrong hand. That's how I knew something was off. She always used her left. Always. Since college. She said it helped her swirl in a perfect spiral. But that morning, she used her right, robotic, distracted, like her brain had already left the room and her body was just finishing breakfast out of obligation. I should have asked. Instead, I told her the Wi-Fi was acting weird again. She didn't even respond. Just kept stirring. And then she sipped, flinched slightly, too hot, and walked out of the kitchen like I wasn't even there. By the time the front door closed, my heart was pounding. I stood in the middle of the tiles barefoot, thinking, she's going to say it soon. And 2 hours later, she did. She texted me from the parking lot of her yoga studio. Leo, can we talk later? Something important. I knew what it meant. Every syllable tasted like cold metal. When she got home that night, she didn't even sit. She just stood by the window, holding her phone like a prop in a play she didn't want to be in. I think we should get a divorce, she said, her voice calm, like a nurse explaining a routine procedure. No yelling, no tears, just precision, like she'd been practicing it in her head for weeks. And I said the dumbest thing a man could say in that moment. Because of the Wi-Fi? She blinked once and walked upstairs. I sat on the couch for hours after that. Didn't even turn the lights on when the sun went down. I didn't cry, not yet. It was worse than crying. It was numbness. A thick, hollow ache like something vital had already been removed. The next morning, she didn't speak to me, but she did pick up a call near the stairs. I don't know who it was. I only caught a few words. Yeah, it's done. He didn't even argue. I didn't ask questions. I just opened my laptop. Out of instinct. Or pride. Or desperation. And I made a call. A call that would change everything. I didn't know she'd be home the next day when I took the pitch meeting. I didn't know she'd hear what I was planning. But she did. And what happened next? She'll never forget it. Neither will I. I locked the door out of habit, not secrecy. I wasn't hiding anything. At least not yet. My hands shook a little as I opened the laptop. The call was scheduled for 3 p.m. Roman would be on the other side, waiting with those ambitious, sharky eyes of his. The kind of guy who never stopped building, pitching, scheming. I hadn't spoken to him in over a year. He probably assumed I'd given up, like most of our old crew had. Truth is, I had. But something about her saying the word divorce with that dead flat tone lit a switch in me. Or maybe it flipped the one she spent years trying to find. I checked my hair in the reflection of the black screen. I didn't look great. Tired. Bloated. But I buttoned a clean shirt over my wrinkled t-shirt and sat up straight for the first time in months. And then, right as Zoom connected, I heard the lock click. Not on the screen. Behind me. In the hallway. She wasn't supposed to be home. I panicked quietly. Didn't turn around. Didn't greet her. Just focused on the screen and forced my voice to sound clear, sharp, like someone who hadn't been abandoned by the woman who used to kiss his palms before job interviews. Roman, I said with a grin I didn't feel. Let's make something insane. He smirked. You finally ready to stop being the sad ghost of the guy I used to know? I laughed. Too hard. I wasn't sure why. Maybe because it was true. We started talking about the old concept we'd shelved 2 years ago, a platform that predicted microtrends before they hit. Back then, we'd run out of funding and energy. Now, he had investors watching. He wanted a co-founder. Someone who understood the back end, the data models, the social engineering. He wanted me. As we built out the pitch deck live, I could feel her presence behind me. She didn't say a word. She just stood there. I could hear her breathing. Slow, almost shallow. The kind of breathing people do when they're not sure if they're supposed to be angry or impressed. Roman was deep into explaining a prototype when she finally moved. I saw her reflection in the laptop screen. Just a flicker of blonde and confusion. Her arms were crossed. But not the usual, I'm annoyed cross. It was the I don't know what I'm looking at cross. I kept talking. In that moment, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Control. Not power. Not revenge. Just control over my own story again. Roman was hyped. You've still got it, Leo. Hell, you might even be better now. Trial by fire, I said, my eyes drifting to the reflection of my wife. Burned the old me to the ground. She turned and walked away before the call ended. Didn't say a word. But something shifted in her silence. And it wasn't regret. It was fear. That night, she didn't sleep in our bed. She claimed she had a headache and took a pillow into the guest room like we were distant relatives sharing a summer cabin. I stood in the doorway for a moment, watching her arrange herself on the smaller mattress. She didn't even glance up. I wanted to say something, anything, but I didn't. I went back to the master bedroom and laid awake, staring at the cracks in the ceiling, wondering if she was texting him. Damien. Or Donovan. Or whatever name she had whispered that day at the store when she didn't know I was watching. My mind spiraled. Maybe it was someone from her work. Maybe someone from yoga. Maybe someone who stirred their coffee with the right hand, too. Around 2 a.m., I checked her location history. Still shared with me. Still on. She hadn't disabled it. Either that meant she had nothing to hide, or she was sloppy. Both options felt like gut punches. The next morning, she was gone before I woke up. No note. No text. No coffee pot brewing like she used to set the timer for. Just silence and a faint scent of her perfume that had started to smell unfamiliar. I didn't chase her. I dove into work. For the first time in a long time, I opened my old folders. Half-written plans. Scrapped diagrams. Abandoned code. The business Roman and I were building needed a foundation, and I had one buried under layers of fear and self-doubt. I worked all day, barely ate, barely noticed when the sun dipped behind the trees outside the window. Around 6:30 p.m., I heard tires in the driveway, but not hers. I peeked through the curtain like some paranoid neighbor and saw a sleek, silver Audi pull in. Not a model I recognized, and certainly not one we could afford. It sat there for a moment, engine idling, headlights still on, before she stepped out. She was smiling. Laughing, actually. The passenger window rolled down. A man inside said something I couldn't hear, and she leaned in, touching his arm lightly, like it was nothing, like it was normal. Then she saw me, through the curtain, through the glass, and her expression changed, fast. Not to guilt, not to shame, but irritation, like I was the one trespassing. She walked in 5 minutes later with a shopping bag and a bottled green juice. "Who's that?" I asked, trying to sound casual, even though my chest was collapsing. "A friend," she said, not meeting my eyes. "You've been busy. I didn't want to interrupt your comeback tour." That one stung, not because she was wrong, but because she made it sound like a joke. I almost replied. Almost told her that Roman and I had just secured our first seed meeting, that we were drafting proposals, that I'd stayed up until 3 a.m. writing out technical frameworks, that I hadn't felt this alive since before we married. But I didn't. Instead, I nodded and asked, "You want me to grab dinner?" She shook her head, walked past me, and closed the guest room door behind her with the softest, loudest click I'd ever heard. But here's the thing. Later that night, after she thought I was asleep, she crept into my office. I heard the faint creak of the chair, the soft click of my mouse, the scroll wheel. She was watching the call replay. I'd left it open, accidentally, and she watched the whole thing. I didn't move. I didn't make a sound. I sat in the dark of our bedroom with the door cracked open just enough to see the light spilling from my office down the hall. She didn't know I was awake. She thought she was alone, unseen, like she could rewind time by watching me pretend to be someone I hadn't been in years. Someone who knew what he was doing. She sat in my chair for over 20 minutes. I watched her through the narrow slit in the doorway, barely breathing. She leaned forward, pausing the call sometimes, going back to replay parts of the conversation where I had talked about future projections, investor decks, back-end scalability. She looked like she was trying to understand a language she used to know but had forgotten. And then she did something that nearly stopped my heart. She smiled. Not the mocking one. Not the tight-lipped, irritated version I'd grown used to. No, this was the smile she used to have when I'd win small. When I'd land a client. When we were younger and the stakes were lower and we believed in each other. A full, soft, real smile. And then her phone buzzed. She snatched it up so fast I barely caught the screen light, but I saw just enough. A name I didn't recognize. A short text bubble. Her thumb hovered over the keyboard, but she didn't type anything. She just stared at it for a while, then locked the phone and dropped it in her lap. She got up quietly after that, turned off the monitor, and left the room like a ghost trying not to disturb the living. I waited until I heard the guest room door click before I moved. The next day, she was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that comes after someone's seen something they weren't ready for. She lingered in the kitchen longer than usual, sipping coffee but not drinking it. She watched me like she couldn't decide who I was now, the man she wanted to leave or the one she just saw on screen. Around noon, she asked if I wanted anything from the store. She hadn't offered that in over a year. I told her no, thanks. She nodded, grabbed her keys, and left without another word. I should have felt proud, like I had the upper hand again. But I didn't. I felt something else. Suspicion. So, I checked the office. Not to spy, just to confirm a feeling. The browser was closed. But the tab had been opened before. Chrome remembered that. History didn't lie. She had watched the Zoom recording 3 times. She watched the whole pitch, from the stuttered intro to the final 5-minute strategy run-through where I had said, clearly, that I was building this company without distractions, without deadweight. I remembered saying it, but I hadn't meant her. I meant the version of me that let everything fall apart. But now I wasn't sure that's how she heard it. Around 3 p.m., I got a text from Roman. Investor meeting confirmed for Friday. 15-minute pitch. Big money, Leo. Don't screw it up. I was excited, terrified, alive. But when she came home an hour later, with groceries she didn't need, wine she never drinks, and that same green juice again, she didn't look like someone who was planning to move out. She looked like someone planning to stay. And that's when I realized something that made my skin go cold. She didn't want me back because she missed me. She wanted me back because she thought I might win. The air between us had changed. Heavier. Denser. Like every room in the house had been shrink-wrapped in something unspoken. She didn't bring up the divorce again. Not directly. She didn't bring up anything. But I noticed the small things. She started folding my laundry again. Not all of it, just the shirts. Only the ones she used to say made me look put together. She started making real dinners too, plating them like some sad little peace treaty on ceramic. But I hadn't forgotten. I couldn't forget. She had already left me in her heart. Now she was just figuring out whether it was worth walking back inside or pretending she never packed the emotional bags. And I wasn't ready to let her off the hook that easily. The next day, she hovered near my office like a mosquito circling light. I was in the middle of preparing a deck for the Friday investor call. Numbers, charts, fake confidence layered over real desperation. She stood in the hallway, arms crossed, half leaning against the doorframe, not saying anything. Just watching me like I was a documentary she didn't fully understand. Need something? I asked without looking up. No, she said, too quickly. I mean, do you want tea or anything? Not now. Silence. She didn't leave. You're really doing it this time, she finally said, soft and uncertain. I turned to face her. She looked unsure of herself, like she wanted me to say something comforting, something generous. But I couldn't, because something inside me had cracked the moment she said she wanted a divorce, and it hadn't healed right. Yeah, I said flatly, because now I have nothing left to lose. That hit her. Hard. She didn't respond. Just swallowed, nodded slowly, and drifted back down the hall. Later that night, when she was showering, I heard her phone buzz from the guest room. I know it's wrong, I do. But I looked. A message preview flashed across the screen. You think he knows? No name. Just that one question. My stomach twisted. I didn't open it. Didn't snoop any further. But that single line echoed louder than anything she'd said to me in weeks. Who was texting her that? Why would they even ask that unless there was something to hide? And what was it I was supposed to know? I didn't sleep. I stayed up reviewing my pitch again and again, voice shaking from too much coffee and not enough oxygen. Every slide became an escape ladder. Every bullet point, a quiet prayer that if this went well, I wouldn't need to care what she did anymore. The next day, something strange happened. She asked if she could sit in on my rehearsal. Why? I asked, genuinely caught off guard. I don't know, she said. Just curious, I guess. I miss seeing you like this. I wanted to scream. Now she missed me. Now that something was blooming again. But I didn't scream. I let her watch. I delivered the pitch like it was opening night. Polished. Controlled. I even added a few jokes that landed well. She smiled at them. At the end, she clapped lightly like a polite stranger at a gallery opening. And then she said something that nearly made me snap. You always had it in you, Leo. You just needed the right motivation. She left the room before I could reply. I stared at the blank screen for a long time, jaw tight. She wasn't trying to come back for me. She was trying to hitch a ride on my resurrection. And for the first time, I realized I had leverage. She wanted to stay close, just in case I became someone worth loving again. But I was done playing the version of me she discarded. Now, I was going to make her earn her way back. The morning of the investor pitch, she made pancakes. I don't even eat pancakes. But she laid them out with strawberries, powdered sugar, and that fake vanilla syrup she used to joke about being liquid childhood. I stood in the doorway staring at her like I'd just walked into someone else's house. She smiled like it was 2017 and we were still in love. "You're going to do great today," she said, placing the plate in front of me like we were back in some Disney montage of supportive spouses. "I don't have time to eat," I muttered, grabbing my laptop. "You need energy. Can't change the world on an empty stomach." I looked at her, really looked at her, and for a second I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe this sudden warmth, this returned interest, this cheerleader version of her was genuine. But all I could see was the text. "You think he knows?" I hadn't asked. I hadn't confronted. And I wasn't going to, not yet. Let her think I was naive. Let her play innocent. Because what she didn't know was that I'd started recording. Not her. Me. Every call with Roman. Every meeting prep. Every dry run and strategy session. Every late-night ramble about product vision, investor targeting, exit strategies. I had started documenting everything, storing it to a secure drive. Not because I expected her to sabotage anything, but because for the first time in years, I had something worth protecting, and I didn't trust anyone in that house. Especially not her. The pitch went well. Shockingly well. Roman opened with fire, I closed with confidence, and the investor, some ex-crypto guy turned venture capitalist named Tyson, actually looked impressed. "You guys might be onto something," he said, leaning back in his chair like a king evaluating peasants. "Send the deck. Let's talk numbers." As soon as the call ended, I closed the laptop, leaned back in my chair, and exhaled like I'd been holding my breath for years. That's when I saw her standing in the doorway again. Silent. Watching. She didn't clap this time. Didn't smile. Just tilted her head slightly and said, "So what happens now?" "What do you mean?" I asked. She walked into the room like she belonged in it. Like she had contributed. Like this was her victory too. "I mean, do you think this will actually turn into something? Like a real business?" "That's the plan." She nodded slowly, then placed something on the desk next to me. A small envelope. No name. No logo. Just plain white. "What's this?" "Mail came for you. From your old bank." I hadn't used that account in years. I opened it later that night and found something that nearly made my skin peel back. It was a balance notice. Withdrawals I hadn't made. Transfers I didn't authorize. Someone had accessed that dormant account 2 months ago. Someone with access to our shared files, our passwords, our history. And it wasn't me. I confronted her at 1:13 in the morning. She was half asleep, wrapped in a blanket on the guest bed, pretending to be exhausted. "What is this?" I asked, holding the envelope up like a police badge. She blinked, slowly, then sat up. "What are you talking about?" "The transfers. This is my old account. Why the hell are there withdrawals?" Her face didn't give anything away. Not at first. And then she played the worst card she had. "I needed help. You were spiraling. You weren't working. I didn't think you'd even notice." I stared at her, 100 thoughts crashing into each other. She wasn't sorry. She was just exposed. "You stole from me," I said quietly. "No," she snapped. "I borrowed. For groceries. For bills. For everything you stopped handling while you were too busy drowning in your own failure." I laughed bitterly. "You mean while I was failing alone, without a wife?" She didn't reply, and for the first time, I realized something devastating. She wasn't staying to rebuild anything. She was staying to wait out the storm, to see if I'd become valuable again. But now I had evidence, and I was done giving her the benefit of the doubt. I went back to my room. Didn't slam the door. Didn't scream. But that night, I copied all my files, business plans, emails, Zoom recordings, pitch decks, onto a private backup drive. And then I changed every password I had. Let her stir her coffee with whatever hand she wanted. Because whatever game she thought she was playing, she was already losing. 2 days after the pitch, things got quiet. Not the normal kind of quiet. Not the, "we had a fight, and now we're ignoring each other" quiet. No, this was surgical silence. Cold. Intentional. She didn't slam doors, didn't sigh loudly, didn't stomp around like she used to when she was upset. She simply vanished into the routine. Moved softly. Spoke less. Left earlier. Came home later. And when she did speak, it was neutral, just enough to maintain the illusion of civility. She was recalibrating. I could see it. Like she was trying to figure out if her grip on me still worked. But it didn't. I'd stopped looking at her the same way. I no longer cared if she was lying because I had already accepted that she was. The only question was how far she was willing to go to maintain her role in my life. Not as a wife. She'd given that up the moment she told me she wanted out, but as an opportunist looking to rebrand herself as loyal, just in case I started rising again. And I was rising. Roman confirmed it late Monday night. Tyson was in. Not fully. Not millions. But enough to get the first real funding locked. Enough to get us on track to hire, build, go public, if we played it right. The energy in Roman's voice crackled through the phone. He was already talking offices, launch strategy, exit plans. "Leo, this is it," he said. "We're back. And this time, we're smarter." I should have been celebrating. And I was. Quietly. Internally. But I didn't open champagne. I didn't dance around the room. Because at the same time that call ended, I saw a name light up her phone across the hall. Elliot. It was the same name that had sent her the message days earlier. "You think he knows?" I didn't hear the conversation. But I saw her in the mirror across the hallway. Her mouth tight. Her jaw clenched. Her hands moved quickly as she spoke, pacing like she was trying to contain something. Something panicked. Something fragile. She kept glancing toward the hallway, thinking I was out of earshot. I wasn't. "I don't know yet," I heard her say in a whisper. "He's acting different. I think he suspects something." Pause. Silence. Then, her voice dropped to a harsh whisper. "No, not yet. He hasn't brought it up." Whatever Elliot said after that, I didn't hear. She walked outside, phone pressed tight to her ear, and paced the backyard in the dark like someone preparing a cover story. My hands were shaking when I pulled up the dummy email account I'd created weeks ago, planbilio@protonmail.com. I sent a secure file to Roman. The full recording of our pitch, our notes, the business model, everything we built. I told him to lock it under his name, with time-stamped metadata. No one else had access. No one else could alter it. Not even me. Just in case. Then I wiped the drive and replaced it with decoy files, versions with bugs and dead ends. Just in case she tried to access my work again. Because I had started to believe something I didn't want to believe. That this wasn't just manipulation. This was a long game. I went to bed early that night. Pretended to be exhausted. She came in after midnight, quieter than usual, moving through the shadows like a burglar afraid of her own footsteps. I didn't open my eyes, but I knew what she was doing. She went into my office. She was in there for 13 minutes. I know because I watched the clock tick by like a bomb counting down. When she came out, she didn't go back to the guest room. She slid into bed beside me like everything was fine. As if we were normal again. As if she hadn't tried to rob me twice. Once of money, and now of credit. But this time I was ready. So I whispered something just loud enough for her to hear before I let myself fall asleep. "You should be careful, Claire, because you might end up watching me succeed from the outside." She didn't reply, but I heard her breathing shift. And in the darkness, it sounded a lot like fear. 3 days later, she packed her things. No dramatic speech. No apology. Just boxes. Labeled. Taped. Arranged in perfect little rows like the past 10 years of our life could fit into something with cardboard handles. I sat at the kitchen table drinking coffee and watching her work in silence. She avoided my eyes the entire time. She knew I knew. She didn't ask how. She didn't beg. She didn't spin a final story to save face. Maybe she was too exhausted. Maybe the illusion was too cracked to keep painting over. Or maybe, just maybe, she finally saw what I'd become when she stopped standing in my way. She walked to the door carrying the last box. I expected her to leave without a word, but she turned, just once, and said, "You were never supposed to win without me." I didn't reply. She waited. And when it was clear I wasn't going to give her a movie-ending moment, she nodded like she understood. Like she'd finally accepted that whatever version of me she'd tried to abandon had been replaced by someone she could no longer read or reach. The door shut behind her. Softly. No slams. No theatrics. Just an ending. And silence. Real silence. The kind that comes after truth. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't spiral. I didn't eat dinner standing over the sink or reread old texts or wonder what she was doing or who she was with. Instead, I opened my laptop, joined a call with Roman, and signed our first investor agreement. It wasn't millions. Not yet. But it was real. A contract. A name. A future. 2 weeks later, we launched our MVP. 3 weeks after that, we got featured in a niche tech newsletter. Then a podcast. Then a call from a second investor. Momentum. It felt like flying. Clumsy, shaky, but upward. I moved out of the house a month later. Not to escape her. but to begin something mine. I found a small place near the river with terrible parking and great light. I bought a second-hand desk and a coffee machine that made too much noise. I woke up every day with a little more confidence than the one before. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like a man again, not someone waiting to be chosen, but someone who chose himself. Sometimes, I still think about her. Not with hate, not even with regret. Just as a warning, never hand your self-worth to someone else and expect them to keep it safe. Now when I stir my coffee, whichever hand I feel like using, I smile. Because I didn't just survive her leaving. I built something out of it. Something she can't touch. Something that finally feels like mine.